Hey everybody, and welcome to kind of a special Dorico video, because guess what? We're on Dorico 6. So just today I logged on and lo and behold, they have updated Dorico to a whole new version. Now I'm going to give you a quick overview of some of the new features, and there's a couple of them that I'm really excited about, and I think they'll be really great for your productivity. I will say this is a paid upgrade. I had previously owned Dorico Pro 5, so it was a $99 upgrade here in the United States to get me up to Dorico 6. So if you do previously own Dorico, there is going to be a little bit of cost associated in the upgrade, but so far I think it's worth it. So let's dive into some of these new features here in Dorico Pro 6. Okay, so there's some pretty obvious changes here in Dorico 6 when you open it. One of is a redesigned welcome menu here. So you have all of our open recents like we're used to, but we also have this little magnifying glass here that'll let us zoom in and take a look at what's going on in our score. So you can see when I hold it down, it makes the preview a little bit bigger so that you can tell what it is that you're looking at and get maybe a better idea of which score you're looking for. We also have this What's New tab, which gives us a little overview of some of the things that we have, including proofreading, cutaways, my favorite, which is bi-level chord symbols, thank you, Dorico, cycled playback, fill view, which I think is going to be kind of cool, system attached items, open typed features, flow heading overrides, again, pretty cool, rulers and grids for doing work in the Engrave mode, which can be really handy if you're doing something complicated, and some improvements to condensing if you're doing a condensed score. We also have a little bit of an update to the create a new project window here, but nothing terribly significant. So let's just go ahead and dive into a document so I can show you some of the cool things that are going on here in Dorico Pro 6. Now, as you might imagine, when you open up your first new document, you are going to be met with this message. This project was created in a version 5.1.80 Dorico and will automatically be upgraded. Now, one thing I want to point out with this upgrade as you start opening up your files is this. If you save your new project in Dorico 6, you can't open it with Dorico 5 exactly the same way. I just saved a version of the lead sheet I was opening in Dorico 6, and then when I open it in Dorico 5, it tells me this project is created in a later version of Dorico. Some items and notations may not appear. If you resave this project in this version, any items or notations not supported by it will be removed. And so when I open it, although this one was originally created in 5, one of the nice things is you can see that it didn't wreck the project. I can still open it, but there are a few things that'll go away, like, for example, the stacked chords that I'll talk about in a minute. So as we go through these things, just make sure you're aware that when you do this upgrade, it can be a little bit of a daunting thing because all of a sudden, if you start saving everything in 6 and go to your office, for example, and you only have Dorico 5, you may need to go ahead and get an upgrade there too, because you might not be able to work seamlessly between the two locations. Okay, so here is our new project opened up in the brand new Dorico 6. And I'm going to go ahead and flip on over to the score view here. So there's a couple of things that we can take a look at in here that have changed. The first one is we have this nice I button here. And what this is this is a new way to get to your view settings quicker and easier. So if I click on it, you can see I can hide or bring back the system track, cycle locators, and I'll talk about that in a minute, your signposts like chord symbol indicators, key signature indicators, as well as the tabs. And the tabs are if you have multiple documents open and where you can kind of see the full score and other things at the same time. I don't typically use tabs all that often, so it's nice to hide that one because now I get a little bit of my screen real estate back. So that's kind of a handy thing. Another great new setting that I found, which I alluded to in the very beginning, is stacked chord symbols. When I realized that Dorico couldn't do stacked chord symbols, I was frankly just devastated because I can't imagine not having the ability to input substitute chords. And I was having to do them as text blocks, which meant they wouldn't auto-transpose when I would go between different instruments. But now in Dorico, when we click on a chord and we open up the chord symbol dialog, you'll see that there's now a little 1 here with a button. And what this is that's the level. So level 1 is the lowest, but if I hit up to level 2, I can now hit a B7 flat 5 chord, for example. And now I have a literal alternate chord that is floating above my original chord symbol because it's in layer 2, and that's what that 2 is for. So again, right now I'm on 1, which is the F7, and 2, which is the B7. Now you might think, well, that's fine, but I can't see anything. Well, Dorico actually also improved that a little bit, which is you'll see the 3 little dots here at the side of our little pop-up menu. This actually allows us to drag the pop-up box out of the way so that we can see the thing that we're working on. And this didn't come up a lot in previous versions of Dorico, but I know for me, once in a while, it would kind of be irritating and it would sort of be like, oh man, I really wish that wasn't there. But now you can actually move it out of your way. And one of the great things about this is it actually remembers. So if I go to this chord symbol here and I hit Shift Q, you'll see that the box is at the same level. So if I move it up once, I don't have to keep moving it out of my way. It actually remembers your preference on that, which is pretty darn impressive. This works in other tools too, like if I did tempo, you'll see under Shift T, it has the same 3 dots because I can drag it up out of the way as well. Now, another feature they added, which is on some tools and not others, but specifically on the chords, is you'll see this little person icon here on the end. What this is this allows us to enter a chord symbol into just the part we have selected. So right now, I have selected my tenor saxophone part, and let's say I wanted to put an alternate chord here of a D flat 9. And so I could click on this little icon here, and that means when I hit enter, you can see it only put it in the tenor sax part, which meant you don't have to remember that it was Option Enter on the Mac to get that same feature in Dorico 5. They actually put it where you could find it. And you'll notice that when I select that chord and I go back into the tool under number 2 there, you can see that it tells me that it is a single staff entry. And you can also see that if I uncheck that option, it copied the chord into everybody's part. So another feature in Dorico that's kind of awesome in Dorico 6 is we have this new thing called View Options. It's under the View menu. And the nice thing about this is we can set the kinds of things that we want to see in Dorico. So for the note rests and colors, you can have voices. So sometimes I like to actually switch my colors over to voices so I can actually tell which voice something's in. Because once in a while I find in Dorico, I'm not really sure which note this is. So like I have notes that are rogue in voice 2 that should be in voice 1. So that's kind of a nice feature. You can also do implicit rest, condensed music's cues, and you can turn all of these things on. And the great thing is now we can save this as a default so that when we come into our next document, this is how everything is displayed for us. And you can see there is information about pages and bar lines. Do we want it spread horizontally, which is typically how I do it? But some of you who maybe are on a PC and you only have a one direction scroll wheel, you might want to scroll down instead of left to right with your pages. There's also these invisibles like the system track, which is the one where you can highlight measures to delete them and add them. You have the rulers so that in Engrave mode you can edit things, signposts, and other things like that. So it's a really handy feature set. And again, because now that we can save defaults, we actually can set it up the way we want it, save it, and it'll be there the next time we open our new document. Speaking of the Engrave mode, you can see now whenever I highlight something, there is this purple X that's on there. And the purple X is indicating an item that can be moved, and it's giving us a way to kind of align it with other things in the document. And so now we have the ability to go in and measure and line things up perfectly because we can use this as a guide. Those of us that used to use Finale, we had this feature in Finale. So this is actually kind of a nice thing because once in a while, I just need to make everything line up perfectly. And so this is a way of getting to that without having to kind of use your eye and zoom way in. You actually now have a way of doing it. And under the view options, if I was to say turn on the rulers, then I would be able to actually measure these things. And you can see that as I move the mouse around, it shows me where I'm at on the page. So I can say, hey, I want everything exactly at 2 inches on the x-axis and maybe at 0.5 on the y-axis. And so now I can actually find that spot on the document, which again allows you to line things up much, much easier and much better if you're really looking to have a super duper crisp and awesome looking score. They've also added another feature, which is this coordinations line, which is not something that I work with much, but I like to at least point it out, where now I can connect these two lines together to show that these two parts are related somehow. Like if you were a percussionist and, hey, I want you to play both of these two lines simultaneously, but I had to notate them separately. It's just a way of kind of notating that. But again, I don't do that very often in my own scores, but it's nice that they thought about that thing and they added it to it. So another new feature here in Dorico is the idea of adding in system objects in more than just the predefined places of top staff or bottom staff or at instrument families. So if we go under the layout options, we can go down under the staves and systems, and you can see that we have a new option, which is system attached items. And so now, rather than just doing the families, which allowed me to do rhythm section, electronics, brass, things like that, you can actually go in and you can say, hey, time signatures, I want to see it only on this part and this part. Or system text, I want to see that at the top of the trumpet staff, at the top of the trombone staff, and the top of the rhythm section groups. Rehearsal marks. This is something I did all the time in Finale, where I would actually put the rehearsal markers in between the different groupings in my score. So now when I hit apply, you can see that my system texts and my rehearsal markers are now in between different spots in the score, not just at the top and the bottom, which can be really handy. It also allows you to potentially move some things around so that you're not constantly bumping into things, because let's say you have some system text in the score that you really need to see, and it's kind of big, but it's over the top of a tempo marking. Well, if we go back into this setting, then we can go ahead and we can change where certain things are listed so that we know that, hey, I want the tempo on the top, but I want rehearsal markers lower down, or I want to have my system text not on the top staff. And so if I turn that on or off, you can see it will hide certain text blocks, and you can see now I put my tempo marking back here on the top, but maybe I don't want this drum solo thing floating over the top, so I can take away the system text, and now that's floating in the middle there. Now again, not everybody's score is that complicated, and so you might not use this that often, but I do have to admit, this is a way in a score of kind of cheating and placing an item in a spot that works better for you. I know as a conductor, sometimes things like retardandos and things are a little hard to deal with. And so this might be a way of literally putting all of that information in one location in the score so that when you look down for items like that, they're always where you expect to find them. Because I'll be honest, I don't always stare at the top line or bottom line of my score. Sometimes my eyes are always looking in the middle, and so I can put certain information like that right where I need it to be. They've also made some small adjustments to the vertical spacing tab. There's a little bit more definition here in Dorico 6, and so they did a little bit better job of sort of writing out what's happening when you change certain things. And they also gave us this new fill view where we can now have the inner system gap in the fill view, which I'll show you here in a moment. So like I said, there's also a new working parameter here, which is we have this thing called Fill View, again, found under the View tab. And Fill View takes all available working space on your computer, and it stretches your system from the left to the right, and then it will go from there down. Now you might think, well, this doesn't seem that useful because it's almost the same as galley view, but there's a huge difference here. Let's say you wanted to have a lead sheet up on half of your screen and then you wanted to pull those notes over to the other side. Well, in this case, I can actually shrink my working screen, and you will see that it cuts off now at bar 12 so that I only see part of the score. And as I stretch it back out, you can see now it goes out to bar 19. So now the only thing I see, and as I zoom in, you can see it changes, because when I zoomed way in, now I only see up to bar 9. So the available space is now literally filled by just this space here, where you don't have more measures that are hanging off to the side. For those of you who can't easily scroll left and right with your mouse, this is kind of a real time saver. And for those of us who work on smaller screens once in a while, this is a great way of ensuring you don't have notes and stuff hanging off the edge of your screen. So it's, again, a big time saver, and it is a kind of a nice thing. I'm looking forward to trying this out the next time I work on a score. Another huge feature in Dorico 6 is a whole new tool that they call proofreading. So you can see over here on this corner, there's this box with a big red 23 on it. Because what this setting is it's telling me, hey, Dorico's automatic proofreader has found 23 problems. So if I click on this view, you can see that it identified a whole bunch of things that it thinks might be a problem, and if I were to correct them, it would make it easier for a player to read this at the first go-around. So if I click on any one of these, it actually takes me to exactly where it is in the score, and you can see it highlights it with a purple box, so I know exactly what it is that it's talking about. And it says here, crescendo hairpin is cut short by a forte. And now, Dorico thinks that's wrong. I actually think that's correct because I want the forte on beat 4, so I'm not sure why it thinks it's cut off. And you can reject some of these items here and get rid of them. Now, I haven't used this proofreading tool a ton yet, but you can see it gives us a whole bunch of options on the things that it'll start looking for. And so if there's some of these that you're like, you know what, I really don't think you're getting this right, or I don't really want to see it, you can go ahead and uncheck some of these. And so, for example, a lot of these have to do with dynamics. So I could uncheck this, and you can see it actually got rid of everything because I filtered out anything that I wasn't interested in seeing. If you correct the issue that Dorico sees, it will actually get rid of this error message. Now, you can see the reason that Dorico thinks that the crescendo is being cut off is because if I click on the crescendo, you can see it's associated with the bar line past beat 4. So if I grab this and pull it back to beat 4, you can see it actually got rid of all of those error messages. And so now the top error is actually this thing in the drum set. And so now it no longer thinks there's an error. And so as you fix the problems, they will disappear from the proofreading list. There is no requirement to change anything. You don't have to listen to Dorico, but I do think it's nice because this hopefully will allow us as composers to realize, wow, we have a problem here and maybe we need to go solve it. Now, one thing that the proofreader unfortunately doesn't do is it won't point out things like vertical collisions in the engrave mode. And I wish there was a way of doing that, but unfortunately, those are not things that it can handle. But maybe in a future update, they could help us with some of these page layout things and point them out for us. You will also note that the proofreading mode does work in parts in addition to the score, and so it is, again, a nice handy tool to quickly let us go through it. And again, don't forget about your eye, because I know a lot of times when I'm in Engrave mode, I'd really like to turn off the signposts in the system track so that I have a much cleaner way of looking at things. Another new feature that they show us here in the parts menu is that you'll see, look at this, there's ghosted text, because in this text block, there is a predefined item here where it wants us to load the project lyricist. But since I don't have a project lyricist in my project info, it's not going to display any text. So it's actually kind of nice that now in Dorico 6, we see those hidden objects like that by default, which again, kind of handy. Now, another new feature here in Dorico 6 is the idea of cutaways. Now, I realize that some composers have necessity of these kind of things, but I'll be honest, this is not something that I use a lot, but it's nice to know that you can do it automatically, which is, if you go under the layouts, you can go under staves and systems, and you can see cutaways, and you can see automatically cut away empty bars. And if I hit apply, you'll see that it only displays pieces of the score where there's actually notes written down. Now, to be honest, when I see a score like this, it's mind-boggling to me personally. Now, this can be done in conjunction with the idea that it'll condense the score also, but in most cases, like I said, I don't think this is real effective for the way that I do scores. But again, it's a huge time saver that it is automatic. And if I don't like the look of it, I can just uncheck it. And voila, I'm back to a full score. And those are some of the things I really love about Dorico, because you can just do these things so quickly and easily. So there's a couple last features I want to show you in Dorico, and it has a lot to do with fonts, but specifically with chord symbol type fonts, and also with page titles specifically for flows. Now, these are kind of complex ones, and I can't really dive in all the way on this one today, but at least it'll give you an idea of what's going on. So if we go back under Library and we go under the chord symbols, if you watched my video on chord symbols before, you know that I showed you how to customize parts of a chord symbol. Well, they've improved this screen a little bit, and they've given us some more options. Like, for example, now we have this option to italicize a chord, and as it says here, we can synchronize with normal appearance, meaning that chord will happen that way, or we can uncheck it to make it into something that happens occasionally. We can also go in, and when we edit a part of a chord symbol, you can see there's some more kind of standardization here in the things that we can enter, and it makes the whole process of editing the chord symbol just a little more straightforward and easy. And so they added some really nice things about this. And so this screen makes a little bit more sense, which I love, because in Dorico 5, this was kind of a complex process. So it's kind of amazing that they took some time on that. And there's another thing about that, which is you can go under chord symbol kerning pairs. And what this is, if you have a chord symbol, say a C minor 7, and let's say you thought to yourself, man, the 7 just doesn't look like it's close enough. If you go down here to this number, this 0.75, you can actually hit the down arrow and see it actually will bring the 7 closer to the MI, because that's actually what kerning means. It's the distance between characters in a font. So the different parts of a chord, you can change this, and that's why there's these buttons here for root, interval, such. So I can go here and I can take this up to the minor major 7, and that way I can edit different parts of this one specifically differently than the other one. So I can move that out, and then I can go here's to the 9, and then I can keep going through all the different variations of these chords, and I can get down to the absolute finites of how I want my chord symbols to look. You can also save it as a default here. That's what the star is. And you can make different kerning pairs for different font sets. So there's a whole lot of customization that you can do here. Again, a really big topic. Now, again, I'm not going to save these yet, so I'm going to discard my changes. And then under our font styles, you can see that they added these two new sections down here, this open type feature, which allows us to add contextual alternates, kerning options, and then standard ligatures and other things. And so if I create one of these, it gives me the option of changing certain aspects of a text block so that it'll look differently. Now, again, this is a really big topic, and it's not something I can cover today, but it'll give you an idea of some of the new things that we can do to really change what's going on in Dorico. The last thing is, under our layout options, they upgraded our flows title. And you can see here there's all sorts of new options for how we can put in flows, how we can put in their title blocks, and how we can change those things. And so this was a really big improvement. And if we go under engraving, under the flow headings, there's also the standard flow heading that we can change here, and we can customize this in any way that we want. Now, I don't do a lot of music that has different flows and different movements, so I don't use that feature a ton, but it is really cool how they changed it up and made it better. I mean, I have to say, I think this is a great upgrade. And if you're looking for help in Dorico, remember, I do private lessons over Zoom for Dorico. I can even do groups at the same price. So if 5 or 6 people want to log on at the same time, I can do kind of a mini class for folks as well. You can go to my website, larsonjazz.com, if you want more info. And if you haven't checked out any of my music, you can also find that on all your favorite streaming services, Bandcamp, or on my website. My new album, Mancini 100, is great. It's the music of Henry Mancini, and it's really doing well. I'm really excited about letting people hear that one. So check that out if you have some time, if you're into movie themes. So without further ado, thank you so very much for watching and checking out all the new features here in Dorico Pro 6, and I'll catch you next time.